there. This is Marty Carmen from World Services Group. We are going to give everybody maybe 2 minutes to join. We are nearly complete with registrations, and then we'll go ahead and start the webinar. While we give people a few minutes before they join, I'd like to welcome you all and let you know that we do have a really great crowd representing all of the WSG members, all of the WSG member regions. We have attorneys, partners, marketing directors, and marketing staff, and we're really going to focus the entire webinar for everyone that's in attendance, and we've really taken a look at everybody that's going to be present, and so we're looking forward to making sure that this crosses all regions and levels and that you have the opportunity to ask all the questions that you may, and we're looking forward to really incorporating and integrating everybody into this great opportunity that we're doing. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in to your chat bar on the right-hand side, and maybe, Kendall, you can just type in a test for everybody so they can see that pop up. And we'll get started in a couple of minutes. Okay, so we've given everybody a few minutes to join, and we do have most of the registrants already online. So for those who start a little bit later, we'll give them a little chance with this introduction to catch up with us. So again, let me just start by welcoming everybody to this webinar. This is a great first-time webinar series for World Services Group members, and I'm very excited that we've put this together, and it's been such a success for the registrants. As you all know, we presented the strategic plan in Hong Kong at the annual meeting, and we are really putting efforts into offering more opportunities to our WSG members and really a great knowledge exchange program for all of our members across the globe to be able to focus in on topics of interest to today's world. As an organization that's really focusing in on innovation and trying to bring opportunities for what's happening today, that's really what's making this network stand apart from networks from the traditional perspective. So we're very excited about this webinar today, and it is going to be a webinar series that continues. So we're welcoming all of your suggestions and thoughts during and after this webinar on what you might like to see or any ideas you may have in the future. So keep that in mind as we go through the presentation. And I really want to start by focusing in on the commonality as members that we all have. Even though we're all in different regions and we have different titles and there are different people that are present at this webinar, the one thing that we have in common is that we all join WSG membership so that we can become more global, so that we can be seen as the top tier ranked firms that we are, and making sure that as many people as we can tell that story to are getting out there. This is just an additional tool in your toolbox to be able to send the messages that you want out across the globe. And this is exactly where we're going to focus these presentations in this particular webinar on social media. So it's definitely relevant to any member that wants to join. Quick programming notes before I introduce our speakers for today. This is a webinar, so you all are on mute, and we can't hear what's going on back there. But again, you can use that right-hand bar to type in any messages, any questions if you're having difficulty. Kendall Repka is our moderator, presenter of the question and answer bar. She can see that, and she can write you directly so that we can answer any questions or resolve any matters that you may have. And the screen is going to be controlled by the speaker. So you can just sit back, pay attention to the presentation, and just listen in to the entire webinar and then give us some feedback. We will have a question and answer period at the end of the webinar. So if the question can be held over, we will hold that till the end. If it's a relevant question to that moment, Kendall will make an effort to try and pop that in so we can all hear the answers to those questions. And with that, if we don't have any particular questions as we get started, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our introductions. So first, I'd like to welcome Joe Beccalori as our guest speaker to the webinar. He is the co-founder and president of Interact Marketing. This is a great opportunity for us. Again, going back to our strategic plan, WSG has partnered up with Interact Marketing. Joe is an expert in search engine optimization, blog development, online reputation management, and several other marketing programs in the digital environment. And what WSG has come together with Joe to do is to offer our members and the network an opportunity to really raise our profile and reach key people that we're trying to reach. The World Wide Web is quite big, and we don't need to be as big as Facebook or any of the others. What we want to do is reach the clients that are going to bring us business. So Joe is now partnering up with WSG, and we're really building an entire program around that, and I'm very excited to have him present during this webinar, and I think he's going to be a great added value to our membership. From the WSG side, I'm just here to moderate and introduce Kendall Repka, who many of you know, at least by email, I'm sure, and hopefully soon everybody will have the opportunity to meet in person. But Kendall is our resident social media leader in WSG. She's been with WSG for just over 3 years, and from the moment she stepped into the WSG door, we really have given her the social media title to lead, research, and conduct so that we could build this program. As you'll see in the webinar, you really need to start by understanding what you're about to do, and Kendall did that from the start with us. So I'm really excited to have her be a presenter and moderate during this webinar, and I think you all will find that she's a great resource for you. And last but not least, I want to introduce Jess Ferdinand to you all. She is new to WSG. She's our new marketing director. Jess has been here just over a couple of months now, maybe a month and a half or so. And what Jess is bringing to WSG is over 20 years of agency, marketing, and branding experience to the network. Jess has already done wonderful additions to WSG and been able to bring a lot more value and benefits to the organization. I'm very excited to have her as a part of the WSG staff and community, and I know that you all will find her a wonderful source of experience and expertise to go to for all the different issues and thoughts and ideas that you might need a collaborator to go to within your firms for branding, messaging, and all of the other things that happen in the professional services industry. So I'm really excited to present Jess to you all, and you will hear from her closer to the end of the webinar. So just stay tuned, and you'll get a little bit more from Jess then. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the beginning of our presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Kendall, who will be starting us off for this webinar. Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you, Mari Carmen. So to start today's discussion, we want to share a couple of examples on social media of firms that have performed good and some firms that have found social media to go wrong for them. The first example we're going to look at here is Cowboys UK. For those of you that may not know, the Dallas Cowboys are an American football team here, actually in Texas, sad to say. I hope you can see right off the bat, Cowboys with the UK actually looks like Cowboys suck. While this was a very bad hashtag, someone did not do their research here. It did get amazing attention for the firm. Bad, but I guess in a small way, good. The next one we're going to look at here is an airlines. Royal Dutch Airlines, you can see they do use a hashtag, which is great. It relates back to their blog. Also, the shortened link here allows them to track and monitor. This is a great example. There is a photo in this. It just couldn't fit in this social media presentation. Here's another airlines. I hope you see right off the bat that this image is a terrible image. It is one of their airplanes. It just shows their humor is not okay for this social media experiment. The image, while it is great, it is a very negative image. And the last one we're going to look at is Chambers and Partners. This is a great example. As a member of the World Services Group Network, I hope that you are all very aware of Chambers and Partners. This is a great example of how they have leveraged their relationship. They have used the WSG network. We were able to see this, retweet, engage in conversation. Images were used. It forms their brand and their messaging. It's just an overall great example of actually using an audience in their Twitter messaging. And again, that was all Twitter. They were able to reach out to other social media uses like blogs and links and hashtags. Now we're going to take a look at why social media. When considering why this is an early on step, we want to look at the main points here to extend your reach. It enables you to act globally, which is why you joined the WSG network. You want to reach those global clients, influencers, and audience in general. And when I say audience, we want to start looking at who your audience is. From the 2013 In-House Counsel New Media Engagement Survey, you can see here that in-house counsel, your clients, are increasingly engaging and relying on social media to make their decisions. 67% have used LinkedIn for professional reasons, which is wonderful. You'll see in a later slide the WSG members that are using LinkedIn, and we as a network want to leverage you in their sites, in their view, and get that audience out in front of you. It's important to provide great information. The last point, cost-effective, engage, and monitor. You may have found that you find roadblocks early on. You've heard these from colleagues, partners, managers, why you should or should not act, but the truth is that your firm is being talked about. As you can see in a previous slide, Chambers and Partners is linking different firms and industry groups in their connections and communications, and we hope that you can take an active role in controlling and monitoring these conversations. It's not okay to be talked about and not have you actively in there knowing about it. Again, you know, your audience you may think are not active, but really we need to define who your audience is, and we hope that you can see how the WSG network can really present you in such a way where you can control and manage that conversation. So, considering the industry, I know you've seen some of these numbers. They may look really, really large, but data here for social media, this is the general population that you can see. It does look massive. It may look uncontrollable, but this actually is an opportunity for you. Among professional services firms, yes, as the roadblocks may say, it does lag behind a little bit, but this is great news for you. We can help you do that, create opportunities for you to be ahead of the curve. As the last point says, a small percentage of lawyers or really professional services firms as a whole do not regularly engage, but that's what we want to help you with here. We're committed to evaluating. Here's some stats on the network right here. Learning and innovating. And we have all of this information at our fingertips. As we just considered those industry numbers, the worldwide community is very large in the millions and billions, but what we want to get across today is that by leveraging the WSG network, we can take that large community and shrink it down to who you want to reach, who your audience is. Again, as I mentioned, LinkedIn is a professional way to communicate and provide your branding and messaging, and it's great and being used in WSG. It is a time to start. For example, the IBA is a large conference, and by attending just a networking, smaller event, it puts you into those key decision makers, and by leveraging social media and gaining reach and messaging, you're really able to leverage your firm and get started. So now I want to introduce you to Joe, who will move a little bit more into the basics and how to get started. Joe?
Thanks, Kendall. Hi, everybody. Good morning. You don't mind passing the controls over to me so I can advance the slides here. What I'm going to get into this morning, I'll lead off with kind of a humorous slide here, which is Social Media Explained. And some of you may have seen this. It got some attention in the last 6 or 7 months. But it's a shorthand, if eating a donut were the subject matter, how would each of the major social networks be related to that activity? So, for example, on LinkedIn, it might be a skill listed on your resume, your professional profile that, my skills include eating donuts, right? On YouTube, it could be a video of you eating the donut, right? It's kind of a humorous approach to it, but it's an interesting way to just quickly look through the vast amount of social sites that are out there and how each of them can service you, right? So LinkedIn, for example, in business, and if you look to the previous survey, most of you are using that, and in business, it's the most commonly used one, right? And that's for not only listing your own professional, but also finding groups, other people who are interested in the same subject matter, other professionals. You can recruit individuals off it, etc. On YouTube, you can be using short videos. They don't have to. A lot of business-to-business clients and professional services organizations are challenged with how to use YouTube, right? It doesn't have to be a professionally shot video or commercial. You can take webinars such as the one that we're doing, screencasts. You can turn presentations into video, educational materials, etc. So as we cover the vast array of things today, and we drill down into some actual strategic and tactical approaches, I thought it would be key to share this with you. I'm just trying to advance here. All right. So taking it back to where it all starts, right? Your website. From the dawn of the internet about 15 years ago, the website has really been the centerpiece or the channel with which you promote your business, right? It's a location on the web. It's got one or more pages. Many of them are very deep. For example, the WSG website has over 1 million pages indexed with Google, which makes it a very powerful destination and increases its traffic and visibility online. So the number of pages, the specific content and details of those pages are very important. When you invest in a website, it's something that you want to consider before you even branch into social media. Most organizations have a website, but in the last 5 years, the criteria for a successful communication tool has increased pretty dramatically. So your brand messaging and everything that you're doing on that website really needs to be coherent and aligned with whatever other marketing and sales initiatives that you're doing. That would include the logo, graphics, and copy that describe products and services. The site should also be responsive. In the last few years, mobile phone and smartphone usage has accounted for upwards of 30 to 40% of all website traffic. So if your website is not rendering well on smaller devices, you need to take a look at how you can remedy that and make sure that if someone's on an iPad, a phone, etc., are they able to do that. And then obviously keeping content fresh and engaging. It's become critically important, not just for usability statistics, but Google themselves are looking for these types of new content, original content in the website itself as a means of how high the website should rank. So, the cited companies and organizations that are constantly contributing to a site or a blog on their site And particularly if they're also syndicating that content out to social media, there's heavy reward in terms of traffic, inquiries, and sales that can come out of that content strategy. So it is the kind of the hub of all the activity that you'll be doing here. I'm having just a little trouble advancing it, Kendall, so if you don't mind, I can just tell you when to advance the slide here.
Sure.
You can move one up. All right, so, what I'm going to step you through this morning is like a 3 or 4 step process for getting maybe from where you are to getting maybe one level deeper and more active within social media. The first step in that process is really just research. Right? We don't want to get lost in a research phase, but what we do want is to gather some basic information, about our own site, let's say, and maybe what competitors and what's going on in the macro environment, and then we'll start to formulate a strategy, and then we'll have some action items based on that strategy. So knowing what people are saying about your brand, about your company or organization, or even what some of the hot trends are in your industry, these are all things to get a good handle on before you begin a social strategy. The conversation online happens whether you choose to participate in it or not, right? So if you have a Google map listing, for example, that shows where your business is located, there are opportunities for people to go in and write a review of your business, and you may not have control over that. So if you're not monitoring and seeing what somebody might have said, you're potentially at risk, or you're not, receiving the positive praise that somebody would be writing. People can also go and, do searches about your business, post things online. So knowing what they're saying is key. And one way you can keep track of that is to do Google searches on the name of your organization or your key executives. You can look at your own website. Google Analytics is a free tool. There's others similar to it to understand where does your traffic come from, what percentage of it might be from searches online versus partner sites and links, so that you can begin to increase traffic that way. There's also social media channels. Are people using hashtags within your industry? Did they mention you by name online? Is there a conversation that you should be a part of that could potentially introduce you to new prospective clients or business partners? And then right on the WSG blogs and the practice group blogs, there are opportunities to, just within the breadth of this network, which is quite large and influential, to be participating on a regular basis. And there's opportunities there. WSG has an active blog role for all member blogs. And for those of you who are already using that, you may be able to see some of the attention you can get from that. And we're adding blogs every day to that. So again, it creates opportunity within network, within search engines on the wider network for people to find you, to find the articles that you or your subject matter experts from your firm are posting. So knowing your audience is key as well. Right? Who are you trying to reach, and how do you get them that information? Do you service a specific niche? Do you know what those people would be looking for online? And are you serving their interests not just with a product or service, but positioning yourself as trusted advisors in that area, having blog articles? Are there problems that people have, and how can you help solve them? Right? And one thing you can do is look to see what your competitors are doing. The internet is somewhat of an open book in this regard. There are many tools, and some of them will show you later in this presentation, to understand, how often are competitors posting information, or what is their content marketing strategy? What keywords do they rank for currently? What do their social audiences look like? And what groups do they follow? So you can in some ways, reverse engineer what industry leaders and or competitors are doing. And we talk about, obviously, keywords, driving more specific results. So depending on your region, there's a tool by Google and some other tools that let you look at, what words and phrases are searched the most online, which one of those can drive the most impact to your business, and then how do you go about, optimizing your site. And in future webinars, we'll go a little bit more into the search engine optimization. But you can also use keywords in social media, and they're pretty effective. The World Services Group is here to help, right? We have compiled statistical reports of traffic and inquiries coming through on your profiles on the site. We'll also be introducing some other ways in this presentation on how we can assess your current website, search and social strategies. So stay tuned later in the presentation for some more details on that. You can advance it, okay. So you've done some research, right? Hopefully not spending a month and a half on it. You spend a few days on it, and now you start to develop a strategy. What we want to do here is just look at your overall marketing goals for your organization, and then start to determine how social media can be used as a tool to help achieve them. Right? So if you have a certain mission, you have certain type of client that you look to bring on, understanding where that audience resides online and how you can reach them is important. And then you want to start to increase web traffic, build credibility and leadership, and then engage with these prospects and clients online. So it could mean joining a LinkedIn group or putting out messaging on a Facebook business page for the ABA or an industry association that you belong to. And it doesn't need to be a full-time role. You can spend 15, 20 minutes a day perusing conversations and content and then finding the right one to respond to. Start with a focused approach, right? Again, the goal here is 1 or 2 social platforms. If you're new to this, resist the temptation to go out and create social profiles on 50 different sites. Maybe look at what you're doing within your WSG profile. Look at what you're doing on LinkedIn and maybe, let's say, Facebook business page. And then once you pick those few to focus on at first, just maintain consistency with the branding, messaging, and frequency. Right? So the other mistakes people sometimes make is they go and they do 3 or 4 pieces of content right up front, and then they don't do anything for 5 or 6 months, and then they come back and say, oh, we've forgotten about this, let's do some more. It's better to have some more materials prepared in advance and then roll them out in a consistent manner, 1 a month, 2 a month, etc. In terms of resources to help with this, do you have subject matter experts within your organization? Oftentimes it's the business leaders and the top of the organization that has the most experience and knowledge and would be able to come up with the best content for an article or a how-to or a tips, etc. But they are often the busiest people within your organization. So if you're the responsible person within your organization for managing social media, you may want to consider, planning out or developing what's the right strategy for interacting with those subject matter experts. Sometimes they can write articles themselves. Other times you can maybe work with them or have a staff member ghostwrite articles and then run 3 or 4 of them at once by the subject matter expert and have their editing and approval on that process so that they don't have to do the legwork and actually post it. Right? Understand the technical aspects and graphic design. A post can be very compelling. A post with a picture can be much more so. So if you're going to write an article or you're going to put something online, if you have photographs inside, royalty-free clip art, or you can maybe even buy photos just to support visually whatever the subject matter is of the post. Don't, underestimate the time and manpower it would take to manage and monitor, but don't overestimate that and be fearful of it either. The idea here is, the reality is in 5-10 minutes you could probably draft something interesting and compelling. You can probably link it to something that you already have on your site, and you can get it approved, internally for posting the next day. So if you're doing something in that manner, just make sure these are the 3 people involved. this is what has to happen, and these are when it's going to happen, and it'll be every third Monday, or it'll be every Friday morning, or whatever, and establish those protocols and meetings with the people internally, including compliance or whoever's necessary to approve it. You know, WSG support and tools, you know, if you just simple things like posting an article to your hosted member blog, creating links from that, you know, a blog to your website, and basic network capabilities are all part of what you already have. Just make sure that you're utilizing it. You know, before you would drill into something new, you know, try and take full advantage of the things that are at your fingertips. Understanding professional guidelines for engagement, you know, implementing defined policies and procedures. So those are, you know, again, depending on if you're in the legal realm, which I know many of you are, you know, those are things that need to be taken with a little bit more scrutiny. You know, you can't make any specific claims. You probably do have to have some kind of compliance. If you're within other professional services organizations, it might be a little easier. There's less stringent guidelines. You can advance, please. So this kind of goes hand in hand with that strategy. Is you know, I think a great planner once said, you know, if you talk about it, you know, it's great, but when you schedule it, it's real, right? So if you use calendaring and you're gonna, you know, have a certain, you know, schedule with which these things go out, certainly use, you know, your planners and your digital calendars. You know, invite the people who are involved. If you need extra time to proof and approve it, but it also defines the schedule so you can stick to it. You know, create the guidelines to ensure the brand consistency, value, and sharing. Know when you're going to post stuff. You know, take into consideration time of day. You know, there's certain times of day where people are more engaged on social, and there's times when they're not paying attention. As a general rule, you know, you don't want to send stuff to, or post too much stuff to business people on the weekends. Monday mornings would be a bad time as well, because people are just arriving to the office and getting started for their week. So what we're seeing generally on B2B is mid to late afternoon and typically center weeks, so like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And the same is typically true of email marketing, if many of you have done that in the past. But experiment a little with your audience and determine when they're engaging. Like a tool like Facebook Insights, it'll tell you, you know, how many people saw it, how many people clicked or shared it, you know, how many people liked it. So if you're doing 2 or 3 of these, stagger them a little, start to look for trends, and then find the time that's optimal for you and your audience. You know, strategize on how the content is actually going to be leveraged and promoted across platforms. So I'll show you on a upcoming slide. Again, your website or your blog is really going to be a centerpiece here, and there are tools to help automate such that every time you post a new article, it'll automatically syndicate out to your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your Twitter. You know, so that's one way that you can perhaps automate and cut down on the labor necessary. But there's different audiences, and you may want, you know, to do some manual posts as well. For example, if you want really rich content and photographs in your post, those automation tools are not always the best. Include WSG tools and resources, and work with the team here to leverage your content across those channels. You know, we're here to help. I'm happy to be a part of the team this year to do that. So there will be opportunities if you want to go in depth or have us assess, you know, your current situation and make some recommendations to you. We'd be happy to do that. And then implement the 80-20 rule. So this is basically talking about messaging. Again, messaging, if you're a subject matter expert, if you're giving somebody that's useful to them in an educational way, or anything that could, you know, position you as the leader or trusted authority in that area, that's really good enough, and that's the way that this marketing mostly occurs. What you want to refrain from most of the time is just doing outright promotional advertising, marketing type things. And I know that some of that stuff is restricted in the legal realm, but even for a professional services organization, you know, you typically don't want to say, you know, save 25% on your tax return this year or something like that. People would people don't typically engage on social that way. On search, that would be a different story, and you can do more proactive marketing. So now you're getting some content out there, and you want to get feedback, and this is where you want you don't just want to set it and forget it. You want to monitor these social channels and see, all right, when you put content out, what are your goals? Your goals should be to maximize reach, first of all. So, how many people actually saw your message? Because if the tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, right? So you want to make sure, are you reaching 10 people? Are you reaching 30 people? The size of your follower base is really going to determine that maximum reach. And then also the frequency and the engagement. So, how often are people coming back to read things in your blog, on your site, etc.? How long do they stay when they're there? Are they liking the content? Are they sharing the content? Or are they commenting on it? And those are your basic feedback metrics to determine, what's working best and what you can do more of versus maybe what didn't pull as well or what people are less interested in. When you have these measurement tools in place, review them regularly. Like I have a little dashboard. You can bookmark things in your browser coming in the morning over morning coffee for 5 minutes. You can see what's happened since the previous day and just kind of, make some determinations on your next iteration on how that might impact it. Eventually the data, you have enough of it to be statistically valid and you can make some real decent marketing decisions. And particularly, you can test things online inexpensively to see if, how a particular piece of content does or how a particular piece of messaging does in terms of driving traffic and inquiries, and then you can replicate that in print or in other more expensive mediums after it's been vetted and tested online. And then finally, be prepared to revise your social media plan. Things will change both on the social channels. There's seasonality. You might be doing something, every Tuesday afternoon on social and it's working great, and then all of a sudden 1 week you get no response to a really important piece, and maybe there was some local or world news event going on, or it could have been too close to a holiday. So don't be afraid to, push that content again, or maybe rephrase it. Hey, for those of you who missed this last week, you can resend it. Don't be afraid to shift that plan and that strategy based on the results that come in. So for monitoring and measuring, and these are also some of those automation tools. I list some here. Most of these are free, but they're power tools, if you will. So they allow you to, for example, draft a bunch of content in advance, schedule them to be posted, and then kind of set it and forget it. Right? So now you only have to worry about coming back to monitor what happened once that content launched. Others will monitor everything that's going on in the social media world or anything on the internet related to a specific word search. So social mention is one of the ones I list here, as well as Google Alerts. Here's where you can just put your firm name in, the full names of key or top executives, and anytime there's new information posted anywhere on the internet, you'll get an email alert saying, hey, did you know that this article came out? It's really great if you're in a larger organization and suddenly you guys got picked up in the press, or somebody from your company was interviewed somewhere, or somebody made a comment, a positive testimonial, or God forbid somebody made a complaint or something about your organization. You're going to immediately have that information in your hands and be able and empowered to react to it, rather than finding out from somebody who calls you on the phone and say, hey, did you see that thing on the internet? For Twitter, again, tons of power tools as well. And I listed a few here. I personally prefer TweetDeck. It just gives you more feature-rich tools in a Windows or Mac software product rather than having to do everything in the browser. And it does allow some scheduling and monitoring as well. And then finally, I list Google Blog Search and Technorati. These are basically like indexes of the most popular blogs on the internet. And when you go to, let's say, Google Blog Search, which you can get to, incidentally, if you go to google.com and you click the little More button, blogs is one of the things listed in there. And when you're searching in that blog search, you're only seeing blogs. You're not seeing any other websites. So if you want to find blogs that are relevant for your industry, places you may want to propose that you become a guest writer and have an article posted there to promote your business. Understanding, what are the top 5 blogs for your industry and who's writing on them. Getting ideas for articles and content for your own site by seeing what others are writing about. Those are all great tools. So we use Blog Search and Technorati to do that. And within WSG, again, the active blog role that's there for all members, the ability to post your own content within the network itself and be seen by people in network for referral opportunities, et cetera, is also there. I list a couple of the paid ones here. They may not be relevant for everybody. Again, usually big brands or larger organizations use these. Radian 6, for example, is a way. It also monitors anything that's said online about a particular name or company name. But it then also gives you tools for managing follow-up. It links to all your social accounts so you can reply to people regardless of where they commented or came in. You can engage with them from a single tool rather than have to manage, 8 or 10 tools. And so, like I said, big brands or large organizations will use a tool like that to monitor and measure their social. If you don't mind, just in advance. Yeah, thanks. I don't know what happened there. So quality and quantity. Who should be posting these? Again, it's going to depend on your organization. Usually in a small to mid-sized organization, it'll be the business owner or the executive that's got the most high quality but least time. Bring in outside subject matter experts and have them contribute to your content. Sometimes, an affiliation with somebody can actually help, bolster your own credibility in the space. Or have ghostwriters, or sometimes if they're talented, you can even have an intern draft stuff as long as it goes through editing and approval. Empowering and equipping your employees to become brand ambassadors. So if you have a particular, piece of content or an event, or maybe you consider you're going to do a webinar like this for your industry, make sure that, your employees are aware of it and make sure that they're sharing it. Have a social media policy in place so it's absolutely clear to employees within your firm, what their empowerment is on social and where they would need to ask for permission. And it's like we have one of these at our firm, and it just makes it clear. Obviously you want your people represented and have their profiles on the WSG portal. People should have LinkedIn profiles that talk about how they're employed by you. They may have the right, anything that your organization publishes, they have the right to share, but they should not say, publish any other statements or information about the firm without written consent. So that's a quick example of a simple social media policy. Other things to consider in there, if people do leave the organization, in that policy, you can state, within 30 days you want to remove your affiliation on certain sites. There obviously, it may go hand in hand with like solicitation clauses. People leave companies, they go work somewhere else. But just have that be part of your general employee agreement when people get hired, and you'll not typically run into issues with social media once they're on the job. What to post? Original written content is what's best. We don't, the internet is full of plagiarism, and we don't want to contribute to it further. So if you are going to borrow concepts from other people or look at what articles they wrote, make sure you write your own original article about the subject. Use visual assets. Like I said, if you don't have infographics, you can create them. If you don't have the time or graphical department, you can maybe just use a royalty-free image. I've used Getty Images, iStockPhoto.com. These are all places you can buy images for between $10 and $20 to support, marketing materials and social media. Original videos, again, it's like that hurdle that people don't feel comfortable crossing typically. You want to make sure that if you're going to do video, that it's got a compelling message. Try and keep them short, under 5 minutes if possible. And again, consider screencasts, recorded interviews, 60-second overviews of your firm, things like that that you could also maybe embed on your website, share on social, etc. And when to post, again, we talked about time of day. Audiences prefer fewer highly relevant and useful posts to more trivial and useless posts. So putting 100 tweets down and getting them all out in a week is not going to really be as effective, as 2 or 3 per week, but to, extremely relevant and useful information. I'm going to hand it back over to Kendall here. They'll give you some takeaways from today's presentation. There is also an appendix. I know we wanted to keep this to an hour today, but at the end of the presentation, I do list out more tools and resources. So if any of you want to take a look at that, I'm sure the presentation will be made available in a distribution. Feel free to contact us if you have any additional questions about specific tools or methods that are in that appendix. It's a pretty good handbook. Kendall, I'll pass to you now.
Sure, thank you, Joe. And if on these takeaways, if you have anything to add, please feel free. This we just kind of wanted to summarize. In the end, a little bit of do's and don'ts, going back to that good versus bad. So first you can see the do's, the positives. We're just going to touch on everything that Joe says. Be authentic. And again, if you have anything to add, please feel free. Use your industry expertise within your firm. The subject matter experts is a great way to push your firm ahead and be noticed in what industry you want to be noticed. Post regularly. Like Joe just said, don't post 600 times in a month and then not in the future. So we want to make sure to be consistent. Manage that conversation. So recently with Chambers using World Services Group in their posts, we just want to be aware. We want to manage that conversation and encourage dialogue. So Joe, did you want to add on to any of this?
Yeah, I mean, the do's are, it's pretty much common sense. When you see these balanced against the don'ts, I think they've got a good understanding of it. But, providing, value and encourage sharing, it's kind of a general term. But, you can actually just ask for a share. Say, hey, please share this article, relevant to our industry on such and such. So don't be afraid to ask for people to read and share. Gaining followers and follow back. Again, business to business is a lot different than business to consumer. On business to consumer, it's very easy. They can just say, hey, enter to win a free product, and they'll get 10,000 likes, right? On business to business, it's not so much about the quantity, but really the quality of your followers. So don't be embarrassed by having 50 or 100 or 200 followers. If they're the right audience and they can be instrumental to growing your business, that means you're making progress if you can hit numbers like that. Use of graphics, we talked about, 3 or 4 times now, and then tagging users. So, if you are responding to something in industry, you could tag the original author, or you could tag a client, or anything like that. Don't be too personal on these, right? So these are the don'ts now, right? Really careful with humor, because the written word can be taken, or tone can be read into it where it's not there, right? So if I said, I never said I presented this social media webinar, how would that be interpreted? But if I said I never said I presented this social media webinar, that means I might have said it in written format, right? If I said I never said I presented the social media webinar, that might mean I attended it, right? Or if I never presented the social media webinar, that might mean that I presented a search webinar but not a social. Or if I said I never said that, then I could have been Kendall said that to you. So the same words with different tone applied to it could mean 7 different things. And therefore humor, just as in email, it can be very difficult. So try and keep it pretty straight, short. Don't over self-promote. Don't give legal or professional advice in a post. If somebody is inquiring about an article, feel free to say, hey, listen, if you have more questions, private message me, or let's have a phone conversation about this, right? And that's why it's important to be listening back, even if you have, I've had things that I've posted where 3 people liked it, but one of them called me up and it turned into new business, right? So again, quality over quantity. Don't provide confidential or incorrect information. Don't neglect your accounts and go like 2-3 weeks without going on there and checking on them. Most of these social sites have mobile apps as well. So you can, if you're a page admin for Facebook or Twitter, it'll give you the little icon when somebody comments. You can control when you'll get alerts. You can say, only alert me if somebody comments on my page, for example, so you don't have to get buzzed every time a like comes in. Don't ignore negative posts, right? If somebody's coming through and writing something negative, try and steer it towards customer service. Try not to handle the whole handling of that customer service issue online, but rather try and route them to a telephone or email conversation. Obviously, if somebody uses profanity or if they're getting rude online, you do have the ability to block and or remove their comment. But do so sparingly and only if you've tried other methods. And then don't start without a plan. Hopefully we gave you the rough semblance of one here today. But then don't wait too long to get started, right? It's sort of something that you can dive in pretty quickly and get a feel for it while you're still, planning out the future. And don't get stuck in this analysis paralysis that a lot of people do with social.
Thank you, Joe. This is Jess Ferdinand, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We now do have some time to answer questions. You should type those into the box on the right-hand side of your screen. We have a couple of questions coming in, and we'll also wait. So, Joe, we have our first question. If you had to prioritize LinkedIn or Facebook, which would you choose and why? And what strategies do you recommend to increase followers on LinkedIn?
Sure. Yeah, I think for business to business, for me, there's no question that LinkedIn is the superior channel for most of how I network, far more than Facebook. So, LinkedIn, I'm connected to people I've worked with professionally, former colleagues and clients of other places I've worked, academic contacts that I've gone to school or university with, and lo and behold, those are often the most viable source of referral business for me. Also, in any business, even when we're actively marketing online, referral and word of mouth still seems to be the largest source when I ask any professional services organization. And so that's why LinkedIn is the most important. The way that you utilize LinkedIn is quite different. So you want to make sure people in your company are educated on how to use it. There's opportunities to tie your profile to your blog. So if you're publishing something on your blog, you can syndicate to your LinkedIn page. And there's some inexpensive paid services there too, so that you don't, by default, you may have to ask for an introduction on LinkedIn, but if you're a paid member, there's a service called InMail that'll allow you to, do a deep search, find a CEO or president level hire in a particular agency or firm, like a prospective client, and shoot them a note. This open networker status. So I think, becoming more aware of how you can utilize all those tools. The last thing I would say is there's a question and answer section. So go into the Q&A within your industry and answer some questions or some common frequently asked questions that people have, so that your name and voice is out there. So that's the the way that I think as a team, your top-level executives and salespeople should be using LinkedIn within the organization. Whereas Facebook is more of a business page, syndicate channel, join groups and interests. It's less likely to yield the same type of results as LinkedIn.
Okay, and we have time for one or two more questions, so if anyone has one, please type one in. In the meantime, our next question is, we have a very small marketing team. We don't have the time to truly invest in some of the activities you talked about. What recommendations do you have for us to move forward? So similar to the last question, but maybe a little bit broader response.
Sure. Yeah, I think, for starters, you're doing one thing right at attending these webinars, because we will be, giving, practical and kind of a high-level advice on how to move forward with social and eventually search and email and some other marketing approaches. I think tools are another good way to do it. So if you don't have resource power, utilize the tools that are available to you through WSG. Make sure that your profiles are populated, that you're utilizing the blog roles, that you're producing content, because that will get some immediate exposure. And then we're also introducing a assessment program, where if we can come in and help you look at your current site and look at your current state of affairs and do more of a one-to-one consult, where we're giving you, not just recommendations, but maybe a step-by-step approach, and maybe even some vendor services for, outsourcing some of it. So those would be three ways that I think you could do it. Again, one, use the WSG tools right now. Two, attend more webinars. And three, the assessment.
Great. Well, I want to thank everyone and thank Joe especially for joining us today. We have a few more minutes that we'll use to wrap up. This is clearly an exciting time for WSG and its members, and for me personally, it's been a great time to join the team. Over my career, I've developed many innovative marketing programs, and I see a tremendous amount of opportunity just in the short 6 weeks that I've been here, and the exposure that I've gained to the team here and to members. Something else that I'm really passionate about is working to build strategic relationships that can bring WSG and all of you value and leadership opportunities. And one example of that is the relationship that we're building with Joe and Interact, an organization that can clearly help us leverage the overall WSG site, all of our web-based communications, and then can individually, work to assist each of you in your personal goals for your firms, and of course, optimize the strength of the network across all of that. Over the next few months, we will be working with Joe and also on other internal efforts to launch more webinars like this one, to implement innovations to the WSG website, to the capabilities that it has to assist you in leveraging the World Wide Web and social media. We're also working to develop other strategic partnerships. And of course, at the same time, we really want to welcome the chance to work with each of you. And we really want to know how can we help, encourage you to schedule some time to talk with us a little bit about what you learned today, ideas that you might have, take another tutorial on leveraging the WSG resources and tools that we have. So looking forward to meeting and talking with each of you that attended this webinar. Remind you also to look out for the replay. There will be an email sent out with a replay of this webinar, and encourage you to share it, review it again, and remind you to be on the lookout for invitations to our next webinars, which will occur pretty regularly over the next few months. On the screen, you can see some of the topics that we'll be talking about, and looking at search engine optimization strategies, looking at pay-per-click and the benefits that brings, also looking at content marketing and how it impacts search and social strategies. So in closing, I want to thank Joe for joining us today. I want to thank each of you for being on the call, and enjoy the rest of your day, and look forward to talking again soon.